There it goes. Shabbat Shalom. We were on the last part of Hebrews chapter 4. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions from where we left off about we had just gotten through it was talking about the rest, the heavenly rest. Then it talked about the word is divides, it's very piercing. That was the 412. And then we started talking about Yeshua, I think, about the high priest. So did we have any questions? Anybody remember where we left off? Do you have any comments to kick this off? I can't remember if we're supposed to be going into chapter 5 at this point, or do we need to finish up on chapter 4? Well, I'll just read it, and if anybody has any questions or comments, please just jump right in. This is out of the Aramaic, the Lamsa Pashita, Hebrews 4:12. For the word of God is living and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the point of division between soul and spirit, and between the joints and the marrow and bones, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. And there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are naked and open before the eye of to whom we are to answer. We have, therefore, a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Let us remain firm in this faith, in his faith. For we do not have a high priest who cannot share our infirmities, but we have one who was tempted with everything as we are, and yet without sin. Let us therefore come openly to the throne of his grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So I think the author there was, and the 412 is talking about seeking the rest, and that because it follows all of the talk about the Shabbat and then the heavenly rest. I think he's saying that if we're not seeking that rest in the present and in the future tense, that the word will reveal us on one side of a line or the other. So therefore, seek that. In 13, he's saying the Father sees it all. And that would be the kind of the end, I think, ending point of that thought. Then we go into a new thought. So anybody have any questions, comments? And as a result of us all being laid bare before the Creator, we have a high priest who has descended into heaven. Let us remain firm in his faith. And then we have a high priest that understands he tempted and did not sin. So are we coming to his throne, or are we coming to the Father's throne? That's a question I have reading the last verse. It says, let us therefore come openly to the throne of his grace. So whose grace are we coming before? All right, I'm calling on people. This is enough. Kelly, what do you think? Whatever you think is fine. Where you at? What's a question you have? What's an idea?
I'm looking at verse 15. It says, "For we do not have in my version, Kohen Hagadol, unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who was tried in all aspects as we are apart from sin." So the context there, it's talking about Yeshua, right? But then in verse 16, let us come boldly to the throne of, in this version, it says favor. Do we know what this word is in, I guess, in Greek? The
Carrie,
throne of favor.
can you put the Greek on, Carrie?
Because then
I
it
can.
goes on to say, in order to receive compassion and find favor, again, I don't know if those are the same words for timely help in verse 16. Throne of grace, and that's 5405, and grace is that, oh yeah, it's the same word, throne of grace. So what is the throne of grace? That you asked whose throne? Is it someone's throne, or is it just the grace throne? I don't know.
Hey, Carrie, you have any ideas on that?
I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up now. I tend to think maybe the mercy seat, but I'm looking it up.
How are you looking this up? Like, what are you looking for?
I'm looking in the Greek Old Testament for those words.
So it says un.
I'm going by the Strong's numbers in a Greek Old Testament that is coded to Strong's.
So, okay, un could just be like so. Proser kamahi. Worship, ascend to, come draw near to, with meta is with Horatia. Frankly, bluntness, confidence to the.
The word is H2580 in Hebrew.
My computer's going crazy. Unto ho, thronos. A stately seat, power. Yeah. Throne is probably not the greatest. It's probably not.
So it shouldn't really be throne. It should be.
The power of.
Yeah, do not hit it. Don't get rid of laying on the screen, but.
Almost to me, it might be more like just the power of life giving favor or mercy, not necessarily throne.
What is the word for throne? Is that what you look up, Carrie? Grace or throne?
The first word, that H2580, is the Hebrew equivalent for grace. And now I'm looking at throne. The Greek word used there is thronos. Thronos. Here it is right here. That's a theta, whatever, O. Thronon is what that says.
Computer.
And it
Thronos.
means a stately seat.
Right, or throne, which makes sense. Thronos.
And what is it back in the Hebrew then?
The Hebrew is H3678, which means seat of honor, throne, seat, stool.
But if you look more at the action of it instead of the noun of it, the verb of it, if you're looking at the verb of it.
What do you mean by the verb of it?
Turn it into an action instead of a noun.
But the
What would the action of that seat be? What is the epitome of it?
the root word for the Hebrew word translated as throne is kasah, which means to cover, conceal, or hide. That's the verb root for the Hebrew word that is the counterpart to that Greek word.
So it's like an authority type thing. I mean, I understand the idea of the word throne. My computer is really going slow.
I go here and you take the top one. It's there. You know, it's like-
Are you guys
Almost
seeing?
like
I'm taking
Go ahead.
all of those.
it's almost like you're coming to a place of favor, right? More like a place or a
The grace part seems to be almost like it has like living a life. You're coming to a place before the Most High and a place of life. The power of this living grace.
I think this is talking about coming before the throne, the Father's throne, to find favor, because the idea is the high priest goes into the most holy place, which is where the Ark of the Covenant is, where the mercy seat is, and he goes in there to make atonement for the whole house of Israel. And the idea is that Yeshua has gone into the most holy place as the high priest, making atonement. So now we're able to come boldly unto the throne and find favor and mercy.
Yeah, it's like atonement. It's like the Holy of Holies. I mean, that whole idea.
Yeah, I don't think that it's Yeshua sitting on the throne. I don't think that this is talking about Yeshua's throne. I think it's talking about Yahweh and then Yeshua being his anointed man, just like you would see in Moses' tabernacle with going into the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant is. That's where Aaron would go in and be in there in the presence of the Most High.
And doesn't that have something, I mean, to do with the fact that the curtain was ripped when he died on the cross, when Yeshua died on the cross? Meaning that no longer was that just a place only for the high priest to go? I don't know.
It's a great line of thinking, Kelly. I think the exciting thing here in the text is that whoever his audience is, he's considering that they're priests. Kind of, we can take out of this that we are priests,
Right.
if we are the audience, and that we have a. So what you're saying is spot on, Kelly. That's the end of the Levites, and again, this sounds anti-Torah, but it's not. It's like it's a different household now. I keep saying that, but anyway,
So-
to me, go ahead.
So, I mean, I'm still so stuck in the Christian way of saying this, but Jesus died on the cross for our sins. And so now we don't have to go through the high priest anymore because we're priests. And I mean, that's what I understood when the veil is torn in two.
Which veil?
The veil in
The
the
first or the
in
second?
temple. The veil in the temple.
As I'm thinking, like the question is, which veil was torn? The veil to the holy
Oh,
place, or
to
the
the
veil to
holy-
the holy of holies? Because I'm thinking it's the one to the holy place that's torn, not to the holy of holies. That one is still, that's why there's still a need for a high priest. Only the high priest can enter into the holy of holies. Whereas the priest can enter into the holy place.
Oh, I never thought about that. I just assumed it was the holy of holies.
Yes, that's what we were taught in Christianity. But I looked up, like I tried to look for there's no passage that I've found that says it's the veil to the holy of holies that is torn. There is none.
Otherwise, all of us would be high priests.
Oh, that's right. Otherwise, all of us would be like high priests, right?
But you're forgetting in the second temple, they had no holy of holies.
In the second temple. Oh, I didn't know that.
They didn't have the ark.
So
They
that's
lost it. They lost it in the first temple era. So if there was a curtain for the holy of holies, it didn't matter. There was nothing behind it.
yeah. and like this ties in with what I was trying to think about this week. Like looking back at the original, the when Father announced to the people that they were going to be a nation of kings and priests, there was no plan for a high priest at that point, or a king, right, over them.
Kingdom of priests, I think, is a better translation. A kingdom of priests.
Yes. So so there seems to be no provision for a king or a high priest over them, because is this supposed to be Father who is going to be their king and their high priest? Is that the original plan?
You are asking the right question, Kay. That's a great question. You're right. This is what we're looking at in Hebrews. You're right
What do you
on it.
mean, Kay, by the original plan back to the garden?
Mount Sinai, not even yes, like even in the garden there was no high priest. It's just man and God, right? Like, and man is supposed to be directly in submission to God, like no middle person there. And
Mount Sinai, before the whole golden calf thing, there was no high priest then, and there were no priests.
yes, and it
Because
was
each oldest son was kind of like acting as a priest, right? Maybe.
These are great thoughts, but the author is saying we have a high priest. So the priesthood is not gone. There is intention of a priesthood still. In this current, I think in the author's time and in our time, there is still need for priests. I'm not disagreeing that Adam was the son of God directly. And I think that's what we're supposed to become. No more priests required, but we're not there yet. So in the meantime, there is to be a king and a high priest. So I mean, I think it's kind of exciting of what he's saying here, as far as we can approach.
What?
Carrie, I think she posted Mark 15 verse 38, and the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. Yes, I have seen that, but it doesn't say which veil.
I agree with you, Kay. I have a tendency to think that it's the first veil. The my thinking of the tabernacle is that you have the holy place and the most holy place. And Yeshua, when he ascended to heaven, went into the most holy place. But we here on earth, we don't enter the most holy place because we're here on earth. I look at the holy place being the place where we operate in presently because we're on the earth. But we can come into that, come into that holy place because the temple curtain has been torn, so to speak, because of what Yeshua had done. Now we can serve in that holy place and be there in front of have access to the sevenfold spirit, or the menorah, or the bread of presence. Those elements that we see in the tabernacle, we have access to that as priests here on earth, as anointed sons of God. But it's Yeshua that is behind the second curtain, so to speak, in the heavenlies. That's how I'm understanding it. Ty and I are having difficulty with our bandwidth here. So every time I come on the video, it slows him down. So I'm trying not to go on the video. But that's why we're having, you see us popping in and out like that. So I'm going to mute myself, and Ty, go ahead.
Well, if there is a priesthood, then the job of the Levites was to minister to the Most High and to work in the house. And their inheritance was the Father, the Most High. He said they didn't get land inheritance. They had another inheritance. So I'm just wondering what it looks like to be a priest in that, in the capacity of Hebrews 4 here. What Is he allowing only priests to come in, or is it everyone?
Aren't we all priests now, Ty?
I hope so, but
What do you mean by everyone?
yes. Well, when the author is saying, "Let us therefore come openly to the throne of His grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in our time of need," does that mean all peoples come to the throne of grace? Does that mean everyone is a priest?
No, I think it means the sons of God. I think it's the chosen. It's because the idea was Israel was supposed to be a royal priesthood, not every man on earth, not every man in every land is to be a priest, but Israel was a chosen people and was considered the son or firstborn, and they were to act as a priesthood. But because of how things fell out when they were in the wilderness, it ended up, well, I don't know if it's because of that, but what ended up happening in Moses' day was the Levitical line, Aaron's line, specifically were chosen to act in that capacity as the firstborn.
Yeah, that's a key difference when in the position of what Christianity would have. It's like everybody can just come right on in, come as you are, you're okay. And it's like, to be a priest, one of the key jobs, one of the key condemnations against the priest is they fail to distinguish the holy from the profane. You have to know how to distinguish right from wrong in a pretty mature way. You have to understand you're not going to eat pork and come walking into the throne of grace or whatever this is here. There is a definitely a need to be a priest before you can do that. I would think we can draw from the text. Does that seem along the lines of what you guys are talking about?
Yeah, I also think, in looking at that model of the Moses tabernacle, in order to even serve as a priest, you had to be of a certain age. So there was a maturity, key there. And the age, I believe, was 30. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. That was the minimum age, which I find interesting given that Yeshua, at his baptism, that's when we're told he was at the age of 30. So,
Yes, that's one of the reasons from an earlier point was that James would have had to have been a certain age before he's put in charge of everything. There's age limits. I mean, maturity levels. Definitely. Were you finished, Carrie? I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, that's fine. That's just what my thinking was as far as serving, as far as the sons of God serving in the holy place. It's not just every person of Israel. No, you have to be of a certain maturity level to be, of those that are of Israel. It's, maybe not necessarily you have to be 30 years old, but maybe it is. I'm not saying it's not the case. It could be just figurative, indicating a maturity level. But that's what I had.
Well, I think when we look at Exodus and a lot of the text there, it really matters how we approach the Most High. He's very specific. The priests all had to be cleansed in one way or another, and they had to be even cleansed daily, not just on the onset of initiation, but they had to go through these rituals because you need to come clean before the Most High. The high priest goes in the Holy of Holies and he wasn't right. They pull him out with a rope because that guy died when the ark was there. I mean, it matters how we approach him. So certainly there must be a criteria. I just don't think everybody gets to walk in. But it's all about how you look at the Messiah and what he did. Go ahead.
So what does it mean about coming boldly as opposed to, I like you were saying, I think they approach the throne with fear and, the mercy seat or the ark, with fear and trepidation. Like the high priest, when he went in there, like you said, they had this rope and all that. I can't picture, I don't picture them going boldly before the throne. They had to go in great humility and like fasting and prayer and making sure that they weren't, you know, in any way approaching the throne or the, you know, it's the mercy, the ark, inappropriately.
Yeah.
How does boldly now? Do we have that word there? Is that right? I'm
Well,
looking up Carrie.
I think it's more the idea of come with confidence that you can do this.
Yes.
Not like walk in, come as you are, and hey, how you doing, man? It's great to see you. It's no casual thing, but do it with confidence that there is now a way to do this that we didn't have before.
I've got on the screen, I don't know if you see it, the word there, G3954, parisia. It says Thayer says it's freedom in speaking, unreservedness in speech. Was the primary definition.
Yeah,
Fearless.
come with an open heart. come bear. Because this makes sense with Hebrews 4:12. Says the word is all, and then you got 12 and 13. It says everything is naked before the Most High. So come openly, without concealing. Come frankly, but not come as just casually. Just keep it real, I think he's saying. Kind of that aspect of keeping it real.
And what is it that allows us to come boldly? I mean, it says because
We have a high priest that
since we have a high priest who has gone through the heavens, and what does that mean, gone through the heavens? Ascended to heaven?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, so we have a high priest now.
go ahead and
It's
show
not
the
like
Greek, Carrie.
before.
Can you show us the Greek for that gone into the heavens bit?
You see that? That is passed into. The word there is derkomai. I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but to go through or to pass through, to go different places.
So unlike before, we never had a high priest, or they never had a high priest who had actually ascended to heaven. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out why it's different.
Kelly,
now.
what if it's just a priest that has gone into the Holy of Holies? What if it's that idea? He's
But
gone
all
into
the priests, all the
the-
high priests had gone into the Holy of Holies.
the most holy place. Nobody in the first temple went. Second temple.
Yeah,
Nobody
that's
ever-
true.
So
Did they actually not go into the most holy place? Where are you getting that information, Ty?
Okay.
I imagine them
It-
going in there to a place and dropping this blood without the ark there.
yes, they went in, but it didn't matter. It was an empty room.
Right.
The Ark of the Covenant that was commissioned in Moses' day, they lost that thing. The Day of Atonement was never a real Day of Atonement without that. So they could go behind a curtain fine, but what did it matter? It was just ritual. It wasn't the way that it was. They didn't even finish it in the first temple. They lost it in the first temple era. Before Babylon, they had nothing in there.
What?
That's where I
Before
get it.
Babylon?
Yeah.
Where did
What was the name of it? They named a child when the ark was lost. I forgot the name of the child.
Wait a minute. What are you saying, Ty? Repeat what you just said.
They lost the ark.
But those teams sent it back, didn't they?
They lost the ark. Okay, they lost the
That
ark.
was- Sorry.
Go ahead.
They
This is
went
the
and
one
bought.
in Judges, right? This is the one in Judges, right? Hello?
Yes.
Speak.
This
Go ahead, Julie.
was this a time in Judges that they
Yes,
lost? Well, the Philistines did bring it back.
yes, you're correct.
So
So Ty, explain what you're talking about. There was a time when they lost the ark and it came back. Go ahead, Julian. Do you want to say something else?
no, I was just saying Ichabod.
The child's
That
name.
was the child's name.
Yes, yes.
Very good.
Um, But I think in the time of Babylon, when the ark went missing, I don't think it came back when they were carried away to Babylon.
But Ty
Is
said
that what you're
before
talking about,
Babylon.
Ty?
Carrie is correct. I think that there was a problem ever since that point
I don't.
with the first temple.
I think the ark wasn't really lost, but it was hidden. I think by Jeremiah, was it?
Okay.
I don't know if we know that.
Okay, let's just make sure we're all on the same page here. You have the tabernacle that was erected in the wilderness, and then when they came out of the wilderness and into the promised land, it traveled with them. And then the temple that was built in Solomon's day, that was a structure, a temple, and that's called Solomon's temple, and that stood throughout the whole reign of the dynasty of David. Okay, all the way up until the Babylonian captivity, and the temple was destroyed and Jerusalem was seized. When they were carried off, there was a commission at some point for people to return back to Jerusalem and to start building the wall. I think that's Nehemiah. And they started to lay the foundation and had an altar, and they began the process. They eventually built a second temple, and that was commissioned by Yahweh. I don't believe that, I haven't found a reference, unless someone else knows, I haven't found a reference where there's a talk of the the Spirit of God filling the second temple. I haven't seen that. I have seen that for the first one.
Mhm.
So in the second temple, if I'm not, maybe Kelly, you can help fill in gaps if you know. I think there was a historical building project that Herod took over at some point to rebuild that second temple, or to add on to it, or something. But that second temple changed in some capacity. And I've heard that there was no Ark of the Covenant actually in the second temple. It was in the first temple, but not in the second. So when the time of Yeshua was born, there was Herod's temple, as sometimes it's referred to, but there was no Ark of the Covenant in there. Does that sound about right to what other people are thinking?
Yeah, Herod, I don't know that he changed the temple itself. Maybe he did, I don't know, but I know he expanded that area to make it really huge. It had a huge courtyard. He made like a great big tabletop on top of the mountain, to make room for more people to come in to the courtyard. But I always imagined that there was still a Holy of Holies. I don't know this. I'm just saying it was empty, though. There was no ark in there.
Yes, that's the greatest point. And I think that this is showing the Pleiru idea of the Messiah being our high priest. I think that he's kind of alluding to the Day of Atonement in this little bit here. Now, I know it might not say it outright. That's just my idea. Does anybody see that, or does that sound off base? Just the idea. I'm not saying specifically, but the idea of going into the Holy of Holies, or approaching even just the holy place.
Does anybody know about the reference in Jeremiah about the ark? It talks about specifically, and from like 12 or 13 to 16. And it shall be when you have increased and shall be fruitful in the land in those days, declared Yahweh, that they shall no longer say the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah, neither would it come to heart, nor would they remember it, nor would they visit it, nor would it be made again. I don't know if anybody's read that reference to it.
What verse is that?
Jeremiah 3, say probably read, well, obviously I'd read the whole chapter, but specifically verse 16, it talks about it.
Jeremiah 3:16.
Yep. And then it continues on. I mean, I was just kind of scrolling through Google looking for some references.
Yeah.
And I've read this chapter before, but that's never really popped out to me. So I'm going to read it later. But I don't know when it takes place, if it's already taken place, if it's, prophetic for later on. I don't know yet. I don't know. I'm just asking if anybody knew about the reference.
Yeah, that's a good one. Joe.
I found something here in the second Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 4. And I'll read these two verses.
Wait,
What happened?
you accidentally tapped something. You get that.
Okay. Yeah, verse 4 says, "It was also contained in the same writing that the prophet," this is Jeremiah, "being warned of God, commanded the tabernacle and the ark to go with him, as he went forth into the mountain where Moses climbed up and saw the heritage of God. And when Jeremiah came thither, he found an hollow cave, wherein he laid the tabernacle and the ark and the altar of incense, and so stopped the door." So this is in second Maccabees.
Wow, I haven't heard that before.
It really makes one wonder if they are indeed hidden somewhere.
I've heard that it's in Ethiopia, or that it's
Everything's in Ethiopia.
Yeah, or it's hidden on the Temple Mount. I mean, the people who are going to read, who are the Temple Institute, believe that when the time is right, that it will be revealed where the temple is, or where the ark is, and because they've built all the instruments of the temple except for that. And there are those rabbis who say that it is there under the Temple Mount. They know it is, and they'll, it'll come out when the temple's built.
But isn't Jeremiah saying they don't need it anymore?
Yeah, doesn't it sort of make you think, if that's the case, that they believe that it's going to come out when the third temple's built, that it really isn't necessary anymore?
That's what Jeremiah 3:16 seems to imply, that it's not needed. It was maybe for a time, and it's not anymore.
It's like there's another priesthood or something, and the old priesthood is losing its power. Oh,
Well,
but that's replacement theology, though. We can't do that.
It's really hard to imagine that it would ever, if it was put into the third temple, that his glory would ever hover over that mercy seat again. Like, will that ever happen again?
It would be interesting to investigate the covenant made with Aaron and to see what that would be. So he had a covenant specifically. I think it's through Phineas. So,
well, like Carrie said, we know that the glory of the Lord went into the temple of Solomon's temple. They saw this thing happen, and there's, to my knowledge, there's no reference to that happening in the second temple. And so, was the second temple ever really? I've always wondered this. Something that was pleasing to God.
It was never valid because of that.
Right. Like he never did move in there. And
there's been no real Day of Atonement. I question if things weren't defiled from the time the Philistines took the ark and it came back. I just wonder if it ever was valid after that.
Oh, I do, honey, because that happened before David. That I think it's valid. And I thought it was valid in David's day. But I do.
There's so much condemnation of the priesthood, like in Ezekiel and so forth, is like everything had just gone astray.
But there was the glory of the Lord that went into the temple, like Carrie said, in Solomon's temple, there was some kind of a that cloud or whatever it was.
Yeah, don't say that other word.
No, it does say.
I just thought of that word.
Pagan goddess. Hey.
another.
No.
I don't want to say that word.
Jew,
I do think that that there was validity during the first temple, but in the second temple, I think when the commission was given, Zerubbabel was to lay the foundation. I think that was a godly thing. I think that was Yahweh intended something good there. But as for what ultimately happened regarding the second temple, you
yes,
know,
yes,
I
yes, it
think-
was commissioned, absolutely, and then, but something went wrong.
yeah.
We don't
Um,
really have it. Maybe it's in Maccabees. I don't know.
I wanted to go back to Hebrews 4, at the end there where we're talking about when he says to come before the throne of grace. I don't think that he's saying to for us to literally go into. I think the comparison he's drawing on the fact that the physical temple there in that day when they were living, he's alluding to that, but then he's also tying in with Yeshua having passed into the heavens, and he is standing on our behalf. That is a sanctified thing, as opposed to what's going on in their modern day in the temple structure there in Jerusalem. I think things were very corrupt, and people were probably hesitant because maybe there were people that were righteous who really did question the leadership in their day in Jerusalem. And this chapter that the author, or in this chapter, the author is trying to reassure them that, it's okay. We can now rest assured that there is a high priest who is interceding or mediating on our behalf. Okay, that's it.
I absolutely agree with that, Carrie. Absolutely.
So
Julian had a question, but he left. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Kelly.
when this was written, the temple was still standing and they were still offering the sacrifices, doing everything in the temple, right?
Yeah, I believe the temple was still standing at that time. You're
So
talking about in Hebrews?
Yes, and so it would have been quite a paradigm shift for the Jews of that day to hear this and say, what? There's been a big shift here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was this is very likely before 70 AD. Yes. So, yes, they were still doing the Pharisees still had control and they were doing their thing.
Yeah.
Albeit it was very astray and there was no legitimacy to the Holy of Holies, the Day of Atonement, or any of that. There was no, it was all gone because that's why it got knocked down and destroyed. It was an abomination. It was a money changer's den of thieves. It was not at all what the lesson was supposed to be. They took the object lesson and went astray with it. So
Yeah.
So,
I think this is one of the reasons why this letter is written to the Hebrews, is to help them with this paradigm shift.
so I mean, like it was sort of like when the veil is torn in two, and I guess it's still in question whether it was to the Holy of Holies or just the holy place. It was a big indicator to all the people. This is over, right? But they obviously they didn't get that. They must have sewn it back up or something, because they continued on doing those things. And I've heard, and I don't know if anybody has heard this, that in the Talmud it says that the temple door or whatever kept opening at night. Has anybody heard this? It's in the Talmud. They would come in the morning and the door would be open and the lights of the menorah would be extinguished, and never again did the scarlet, with the Azazel thing, there was a scarlet thing, I forget. It never turned whatever color. Maybe it always stayed red. I forget.
There was
I
a
think that's
string tied on the door of the tabernacle, right? Or the temple or something.
simple. Yeah.
It would turn scarlet thread and it would turn white or something, but then it stopped doing that.
It never turned again. Yeah. That's all in the Talmud. So there were all these indicators that these things something had happened with the temple.
But wasn't there something about the goat of Azazel coming back or something? And then they started like just pushing it off a cliff or something. Well, it counts.
I think the greater thing happening in Hebrews is that all of that was not even meant to be forever. It was all a transitional thing. All of it. The whole temple structure, the tent of meeting, through the first temple, through the second temple, it was all a transition to something else. And Hebrews drives this home, and that's why it's so rejected. Everyone hates Hebrews because it's breaking Torah and changing things. And it's like, that never was the intention. The golden calf made things necessary that wouldn't have, and the failure to just walk into the promised land and take over, and all these other failures created all these other needs along the way. This was not it's coming back around to the way it's supposed to be. So anyway.
I still have a question about what Jesus' death on the cross is. The Christian thing is Jesus died for our sins, so we no longer need the sacrificial system anymore because he paid the penalty for our sin. But we're saying that's not true. So what happened? What was the thing that changed?
He died and was resurrected. He became the first fruits. He overcame death. It's not the death, it's the life that matters. He's the first fruits. And he showed us how to do it, and he showed us that it can be done. We have an example. We still have responsibility. We don't just say the name of Jesus and everything is fine. That's what Christianity will tell you. You just say that and you're okay. No more requirement on your part. No legalism required. No obedience. No holiness. We can just be like the world. And it's like, no, to approach the throne, you have to be a priest. You have to, whatever this is we're looking at in here, it's not for everybody. It can't be. Pork eaters and people doing magic and idolaters of all different. It's not for them. It's for a holy people. It can't be that what Christianity does with it. It's just a twist on it. Did I answer your question?
I guess we'll encounter more problems as we go through Hebrews because I think Christianity likes Hebrews in a way because it seems to
they like to misquote it.
And it's the Messiah. It's those in the Hebrew roots movement who don't like Hebrews.
Right.
Who has a hard time, explaining Hebrews.
Yes.
But Christianity does not explain Hebrews. Christianity turns it into an idolatrous thing. They don't have an answer. They just proof text it. They don't understand it.
You know what? I think one of the subjects that came up today when we're talking about the curtain, I think this is part of the problem, is that Christianity does, generally speaking, may not recognize that there's actually two curtains. There is a curtain that the priests are able to go through, and then there's a curtain that the high priest goes into. So in one regard, they have this idea that, now Yeshua has gone through, into the heavenlies. Now we can boldly come into the most holy place. And it's like, no, that's not what is being said there. And so they forget the whole idea of the need for holiness, the need to understand, to be able to distinguish between the clean and the unclean and the holy and the profane. They kind of forget that part of Torah. And then the Hebrew roots people, who tend to not like the book of Hebrews, I think has a tendency to want to keep that most holy place most holy and not allow anyone to have gone in there. They don't, and they want to keep their holy, they want to keep their tabernacle in place. They don't want to lose any of it, because they feel like Christianity has robbed them of Torah keeping, when really what we've been missing is what's supposed to happen in the holy place. That's what we've been missing. And we're learning what needs to happen in the holy place.
In the holy place needs to be holy. It needs to be distinctly separate from other things of the world. It's for a holy people. Even the first curtain, it's layers of holiness. And in Solomon's temple, the Holy of Holies, you went up. It was a higher place. Ascended into a higher place, literally and figuratively. So some of what's being said in the end of Hebrews chapter 4 may just be indicating there's a high priest in there now, in that place, that higher place, most holy place. Not all priests, but the priest, our guy, he's in there now.
And so now we're going into the holy place boldly. But
No,
I don't understand.
with some confidence that we might not die, I would think. A little more confidence. It's okay. Our
But
guys
there was
in there.
not a fear of dying going in there, was there? Into the holy place?
Only Levites could go into the temple. Nobody else was allowed.
Right.
Yeah, into the whole. I don't know if anybody died by going into the holy place, but it was restricted. Only the Levites were allowed in the holy place.
Tell that to Mount Sinai.
Yeah. So Carrie, we're coming in there. Why? You said something about the seven spirits, something. having
Okay,
to do
well,
with menorah.
what's in the holy place? We have the menorah, which is a 7-branched candlestick of light. And then which has oil burning in it, and that's supposed to stay burning through the night from evening until morning. That's one of the jobs of the priest, is to keep it going. And then you have the bread of presence, the table of presence with the loaves, for the 12 tribes of Israel, right? The bread, and that had to be swapped out every Shabbat or every seventh day.
Okay.
So you've got prominent things in the holy place. So
The table
in our mind,
of incense, right?
yeah, the table of incense. That's where I think it's a little confusing. Is the table of incense on this side of the curtain or on the other side of the curtain? The book of Hebrews makes it a little confusing. I think that it's supposed to be in the holy place, and that's where the prayers are being made. You would burn incense there.
The prayers, yeah.
Okay, so if that's the case, then that is a third element in the holy place. So what is that? I think the candlestick or the menorah is representative of the Holy Spirit, the sevenfold Spirit that we hear
Why are you
about.
calling it sevenfold?
I'm thinking about Revelation. It refers to standing in the midst of, talks about sevenfold Spirit there. And then also Isaiah 11:1, wisdom of, the spirit of knowledge, understanding, wisdom, counsel, I can't remember them all. And the fear of Yahweh, I think, is like the seventh pillar, or I'm not sure. This is something that I think is worth investigating. I'm not teaching on this. This is just where my mind has been, and I'm totally open to studying that out more. So I kind of envision the candlestick as being representative of that, and then the bread of presence, and then the altar of incense. The bread of presence, I don't know. That's something that we could talk about further.
Carrie, it's 1:00. Yeah, that's the showbread, the bread from heaven, manna. The high priest that fills that up a little bit.
Stop it.
Just looking at the idea of bread.
Well, there were
Yeah.
12 loaves. I know there was 12 loaves, one for each tribe.
Yeah, I think
And
it
they-
would be very interesting to understand that better, because I always think come boldly before the throne of grace means we don't need a high priest to go into this is how I've always believed, go into the Holy of Holies for us to ask for forgiveness. We can go and ask for forgiveness ourselves. We can talk to him. We don't have to go and confess our sins to the priest. We can go right to the Father, and so coming boldly means we have the privilege, I guess, now of coming directly to the Father and not going through all this intermediaries. So I don't know if that's like a flawed view, or like if it just means coming into the holy place, then those implements that you were just mentioning, what does that mean, and how does that change this perception that I have, anyway, the more Christian view here.
Well, Kelly, we have a high priest, but we don't really need him because we can go in with, right?
What are you saying?
I said, Jesus did it all, so we don't even need a high priest.
That's Christian view. Is that what you're saying? Because that's what I think. We just go right to the. Well, I guess we do understand that Jesus is the intercessor, right? And that's why Christians are always praying to Jesus. I don't know.
So let's kind of recap what we think it is rather than what Christians say it is. How do we understand it? I understand. Well, no, let me hear what you guys have to say. What do you guys, how do you understand the position of Yahweh and Yeshua and us in light of all that we've just been talking about as far as how we approach either one of them, or both of them, or any of them? What are your thoughts on that? The hierarchy, or the where we all come into play in the scenario. Okay, I can start it if no one else wants to. I think of Yahweh is the king of the universe. I think he is the creator, the maker of all, and he is ultimately in charge of everything. And then I believe that he has given authority and power and dominion to his anointed son, which I identify as Yeshua, being an anointed son as an individual, but I also see that there is probably a body politic, or a corporate body identified as the son. But as far as individuals go, I see Yeshua as being that anointed son, and he has been given dominion, authority, and power. And we are other sons, sons of men, being human, but then we're also growing and aspiring to be in the likeness of our Maker, so that we can be revealed as being sons of God as well. And we look to Yeshua as our model, as an example, as a teacher who has enlightened us and helped us to understand better what the prophets wrote about, and to give us insight. We glean from that, and we're growing in wisdom and knowledge and understanding through the Spirit that has been poured out on us, and that's how we operate. And right now, Yeshua is not here on the earth, but he was raised from the dead and resurrected and ascended and is seated at the right hand of the Father, according to the New Testament. That's my understanding. And our hope is that there is life after death, and we are experiencing kind of like a spiritual life after a spiritual death, having come into the realization of turning from our wicked ways and now turning back to the Father and trying to live according to his ways. And we have a hope of, even though we will die physically, likely, unless something happens prior to that, but there's a hope of a physical resurrection. That's my understanding. But I'm living in the here and now, how I function in my daily life. I pray to the Heavenly Father, as Yeshua taught his disciples to pray, praying that his kingdom come here on earth as it is in heaven, and that his will be done, and that I can be instrumental in whatever capacity he has me filling here on earth now. And I don't worship Yeshua as God. However, I reckon him as a true prophet, as the prophet like unto Moses, as the anointed son of God. He is unique, and so that's kind of where I'm at. So anybody else want to share, give their, I guess, testimony? I think it's good to help us to kind of clarify what we do believe, because we do toss around a lot of ideas, and we're thinking outside the box, and we've been recording these sessions, and now that we've made them public, other people may come across them and might be very confused as to where we're at. We're all learning. None of us have arrived, and just kind of, if anybody wants to share, we're into the next hour of the segment, so we're kind of out of the Hebrews study portion, but I don't have anything formal to present, but I think this would be a good move. So if anybody wants to share their position, their understanding of Yahweh, Yeshua, and you.
I just want to share something that when you were sharing the screen on eSword, and then you were looking up the word throne in Greek, I think, or Hebrew, can't remember. And then it pointed, I don't know if it's the first occurrence in the Old Testament, and it's Genesis. It's the account of Pharaoh and Joseph. And I think, oh, that is so cool, because that throne, that's exactly what Pharaoh said, that if he's on the throne, he's the only one, above Joseph. Everybody is in submission to Joseph. And that's the very picture that we were talking about even before, right? The relationship of the Father and the Son and the rest of the sons. So, so that was really cool, doing that word search. And I'm glad I never thought eSword is cool because I'm not techie. Now I'm going to explore it. Anyway, and also I seem to remember okay, the Father gave Yahusha all the authority, and then is there some point where where the Messiah is going to give back all this authority to the Father, and will be ruling together with the sons, the other sons of God? Because if this is so, then this would also point back to the original, where there is no high priest. There's no more need for a high priest, that everybody is priest, everybody is king. And we have Abba as our, head over us, the king over us, who will rule over us. So I'm just, thinking about it.
1 Corinthians 15:28, Kay, that's the one you're looking for to answer your question. And I wanted to make a comment on the son thing. You had mentioned son earlier. I think everywhere son is used, it's plural, unless it says, this is my uniquely begotten son. This is my specific son. I think we look at son too often in terms of it being singular when it's just plural. The firstborn coming out of Egypt, it was a plural son. It wasn't just one guy. But there's an anointed son among the sons, higher than his fellows. The chief guy among his people. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Does it say anywhere that Jesus is our intercessor?
High priest. It says it in Hebrews all over the place. We're going to be getting to it.
And so what does that role look like? I mean,
What was the job of the high priest in Torah?
What's the difference? Okay, you said intercessor. Do you mean intercessor or mediator? Because when I think of intercessor, I think of a prayer, someone who prays, who intercedes in prayer. And we could all be intercessors. And I think all the priests, could be considered an intercessor, not necessarily a high priest.
Phineas was an intercessor. Moses holding up his staff during the fight was an intercessor. There's a lot of intercessors. All over.
Yeah, Abraham, prayer of a righteous man. Go to Abraham, he's a prophet, and he'll pray for you. And, with Pharaoh, or not Pharaoh, was it Abimelech? Or one of them who had taken Sarah as his wife, not realizing it was Abraham.
And Job had to pray for somebody. So what are you saying that the definition of a mediator is then? You think it's different?
Okay, I guess I'm thinking an intercessor can operate, I guess it has similarities. A mediator is someone who goes between two people. Intercessor, essentially, I guess it's the same thing. I suppose it's just my own, the way I process or remember names. It sounded like you were saying as if it was an exclusive position. The intercessor or the mediator, as if there's only one. That's what I was thinking you were asking.
Well,
Sorry.
If he's a mediator between us and God, I guess I'm thinking of him as that. Isn't that why Christians pray like in Jesus' name and all of that stuff? I mean, it's like he's
Kelly. If we don't need a high priest, why do we need a mediator? Why do we need an intercessor? If we can go boldly before the throne, why do we need anybody? It's like they make two different positions true. You need them, but you don't need them. It doesn't make sense.
But what is the truth? I mean, what is the right way?
There's a high priest. There's always an intention of the high priest. Abraham made a tithe to Melchizedek. There's always a high priest.
How does that affect how we pray, though?
You tell me. I'm not telling anybody how to pray. Our Father.
Wouldn't we pray to the Most High when we pray to our Creator? Because isn't He the one who's going to be answering our prayers?
Who did the Messiah pray to?
The Father.
Yes, but
He didn't pray to
what
himself.
is his role as a mediator? I don't know.
But he didn't pray to himself. He prayed. If we needed to pray to him or pray to the Most High through Jesus, then why did he pray to the Father himself? Why did he say pray to the Father when you go to the Father? I think we pray to the Father. We pray to the Most High. We pray to our Creator.
Well, I believe that too, but what is his role as mediator then for us now?
Okay, at Sinai, before the golden calf, Moses went up. That's the job.
Yep. That's how I see it. Just think we don't in our current condition and stuff, yeah, there's always got to there's got to be a front man or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's been people all throughout scriptures that they go to the Most High and they mediate on behalf of the people. They talk. They kind of go between.
In Torah, it says, it is good that they sent you up. They fear me. They understand now because they heard my voice and they're afraid they're going to die. And they sent you up. And it is good. There's supposed to be that guy, I think.
And in that case, Moses went up and listened to what God had to say and came back and gave the word to the people. I mean, obviously they didn't pray to Moses. I don't know. It's just hard to picture how it works out with the way it is right now. I understand what you're saying about Mount Sinai.
I'm sorry, I had to move from room to room. I didn't hear everything you all just said. Did you say that we need to have a mediator? It's always been that way? Is that what I heard, that it's always been that way and we need to have a mediator? Is that what someone said? Ty, what did you just say? Somebody said something about always having to need something.
I said that even at Sinai, before the golden calf, they sent Moses up, and the Most High said it is good. I mean, I think that's the most basic idea of a mediator.
But isn't it at Mount Sinai, at first, Yahweh was speaking directly to them as a corporate body, and it was the people who rejected that, like in the sense that they said, oh, we're not, we're going to die. They were afraid. And so they asked Moses to be their go-between.
Yeah, I think that somebody brought up the idea of the kingdom being handed back over to the Father. I think the original intent was between God and man, just man accessing direct relationship to the Creator. But over time, there was a need for a righteous man to be in between God and the general population because of holiness, essentially. And that plays through all throughout the scriptures. And we see it in, first in Abraham being a righteous man. I mean, that's not the first one, but that's an example, an early example. And then with Moses, and then all throughout. And then you have David. They weren't satisfied with just having a priest. They wanted a king as well. And when Saul was anointed, and not that wasn't necessarily part of Yahweh's plan, I do think it was part of his plan to have a human king over the house of Israel, but I just don't think it was meant to happen. Well, it doesn't matter. It happened. And it was to teach us. I think just like the tabernacle system was put in place to teach the people about how to come before Yahweh, I think the idea of a king, an anointed man over men, was also to teach us something. And that's what I'm still trying to learn. But when it all is said and done, I think we're going to get back to a place where we don't need to have another man interjected between God and man. I think the 8th day that we talk about, when there's a new heaven and a new earth, and people are going to be able to access God at that point, because all will know him, and the holiness issue won't be an issue anymore, because sin will be a passe thing, and everybody's going to be singing Kumbaya and everything. No, everything's going to be the way it should be.
Yes. And also in that sense, Carrie, I'm thinking like right now as a mediator, Messiah being the mediator, intercessor, and high priest. One of the hey guys, are unmuted. One of the things that I do is look to the Messiah for examples of obedience, role modeling, how to be perfect, how to grow in this walk. I mean, he is that. He is our discipler. And so he shows us that because we're not yet in the place where he is. And he's telling us, hey, it's reachable. You can be where I am too. It's doable. Just follow me. And so this is his purpose, his role, so that we have somebody to follow and to teach us things. And so in that sense, he is a mediator. He's an agent. And a high priest, which is he teaches us all truth. And so and then when we become like him, like we have perfected our obedience to the Father, and so that's well, anyway, yeah, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, another thought I had regarding the high priest. The high priest, what distinguishes him from the other priests is his garments, for one thing. His garments are a lot more distinguished, and he wears the mitre, the thing on his head, and holy to Yahweh. And I mean, it's a very esteemed position. Whereas the other priests, they had special garments as well, but and they had similar responsibilities in that performing service in the temple, not in the most holy place, but in the holy place. But the high priest, he had more honor than the other priests, and he also, I think, he had more of a burden than the other priests, because he wore the ephod and with the different gemstones or whatever on it, and the Urim and Thummim, and I don't understand all of that, but the point is that he carried a different office than all the other priests. And what we aspire to, or what role we may, the way I envision it anyway, the role that we may be playing is not the role of the high priest. Our role is the priest. And we don't bear the ephod, we're not wearing those garments. I think that is identified with Yeshua. And but we're still considered, or what we're aspiring to, the idea of a royal priesthood. Anyway, so I do want to make sure that we keep that in mind, or that I keep that in mind in all my talking about, Yeshua is a man, he's not God, but he's an elevated man. He is a man in higher honor and glory and power than any of us other righteous men, even. So, a thought.
So what will be Yeshua's role in the end? I mean, I'm looking at Revelation where it says, this is 21, where it just says the city, this is verse 23, the city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb, and I'm assuming that's Yeshua, is its lamp. I mean, it seems like he still has some kind of a role there.
Well, that's a good question. When I think of that, I think of the light and the lamp. Because I've looked at this before and I don't have a crystal clear picture, but where my mind has been is a lamp, a light comes forth through a lamp. A lamp is a vessel through which light shines. And you know how we are often, you know, Yeshua refers to his disciple, you are the light of the world. He is the light of the world, but then he also tells his disciples, you are the light of the world. We shine, or we allow as vessels the light of our Father to shine through us. And I think that happens in our words, what we speak, the words that we speak, and in our deeds. So this idea of the lamb being the lamp, you know, I do think that that's referring to Yeshua as well. I've always thought that. But I'm open to opening my mind bigger than that, and maybe the lamb is referring to Israel, you know, or when I say Israel, I don't mean Israel over there in the Middle East today. And when I say Israel, I don't even necessarily mean just the physical descendants of Jacob. I'm thinking that it's a chosen, upright people who have chosen to covenant themselves and circumcise their heart to have God be their God and him be us be his people. And that may be we're part of the picture of the lamb. You know, I don't know. Again, I'm just kind of thinking outside the box and thinking bigger, given the last couple weeks talking about this idea of generic terms. If we can relate ourselves to the Son of God on a corporate level, or the anointed, you know, I'm not anointed to be the high priest, but I may be anointed to be a priest. I'm still anointed, you know, like if I am. I mean, I don't want to be too bold or too overstep anything. Okay. So the question was Yeshua's role. I'm sorry. Tend to like go off on la 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 la.
No, I think you answered it. Like I can sort of see what you're saying there about possibly the lamp it gets its light from Jehovah or from God, and then we could possibly have a role in that, like being,
Because I think, I mean, really,
being
when
lit
you
by
stop,
him.
you stop and think about what is the purpose of mankind. I mean, he made us to be he made Adam to be in his image and likeness, and gave him dominion to live on the land that he created for him. Isn't that his heart's desire for all of his children to live in the land that he made for them and to prosper and good things to happen? And we are to reflect him in heaven here on earth. And ultimately, that's what we're all striving for, I think.
I had an answer in terms of revelation. I think that the job of Yeshua, the Messiah, son of Joseph, son of David, he is the greatest of the lesser luminaries. He is the greatest of creation, the bright and morning star. He's the brightest luminary of men. He's the chief guy. He's the anointed. That's what I think. And he has a special place at the right hand of power. His light shines so brightly that it's part of the light in the New Jerusalem.
Hmm.
So that's my answer.
Yeah, I like how, I mean, like you were saying, he's compared as like unto Moses, Yeshua, and so Moses was like a mediator. he was an anointed leader, and but obviously superior to Moses.
Does anybody here remember the verse, something about that says Moshe wrote off Yahusha? Is there such a verse? Like, I'm just thinking on top of my head, and I wonder what that meant. Like, where in the Tanakh did?
So you have to say it again in common terms, Kay. I didn't catch the. Say it in common terms.
Is there a verse in the New Testament where it says Moses wrote off the Messiah?
It was Yeshua talking to the crowd. He's like, if you believe Moses, you would have believed my words because Moses wrote them.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, John 5:46.
What did he mean? Moses wrote of me. And where in the Torah or in the entire Tanakh did Moses write of Yahusha?
Well, Exodus 18 in the Samaritan.
Exodus 18?
Krishna.
It's not in most of them.
It's in are you talking about the prophet like unto Moses, Ty?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, it's in Deuteronomy. I think it's Deuteronomy 18, but the account is speaking of, I will raise up to you a prophet like unto you, him you shall heed, lest you be destroyed, or something like that. But it's attributed to having been spoken at Mount Horeb or at Mount Sinai in the day when Yahweh came and gave the commandments. So
this
I mean,
is so when he said, for he wrote of me, he is pertaining to the time when Moses said that a prophet like him will be raised up.
maybe. Maybe he's talking about the books of Moses, not necessarily Moses, the individual, because the books of Moses, Genesis through Deuteronomy, I mean, I could see Yeshua being identified all throughout it, not, specifically, there will come a man named Yeshua and he will do this, this, and that, not that plainly. But type, shadow and type of Yeshua. But I do think the prophet like unto Moses, I think that's a big point that a lot of people miss. I was going to categorize what kind of people, but I think generally people miss it. What does it mean?
Circumcision group. I'll say it.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of Christians miss it too. I think they don't understand what that reference is necessarily. But yeah, prophet like unto Moses, what does that mean? Some people claim that is Joshua, son of Nun, and that he was it. But in Acts, I don't remember, I think it was Peter that testifies that it was Yeshua who was the prophet like unto Moses. Because the thing about that is Moses, unlike any of the other prophets, had a relationship and he gave instructions, not like any of the other prophets. I mean, none of the other prophets gave the law, that they're not identified as lawgivers. So nobody else did anything like that. And then you got Yeshua coming along and he's saying, you've heard it said this, and I say that. He wasn't denying what Moses had said or what Yahweh had said through Moses, but he was filling it up and giving it more. So that kind of sets him apart from Isaiah, Jeremiah, or any of the other prophets that came before him. Anyway, sorry, I kind of went on that tangent. Nia, I guess the start of the hour, one of the things I was asking is how you guys see the relationship of Yahweh, Yeshua, and you. I think that's a good way of laying it out. And I've harped on this before, and I feel like I'm preaching to the choir and talking to you guys specifically in the room about it. But this idea of Yeshua not being the God that our culture has painted him as is a really important subject and concept to really hold of, because I do believe it's part of this end time deception. When I say end time, I don't know if it's but in the days that we're living now, I think there's a great deception, and that is playing into it. So what are your guys' thoughts? Anybody want to share their testimony or their position presently? I know, subject to change. We're all subject to change.
Just agreeing with you, Carrie, about the end time, or in these days that we're living in deception. It's such a big one because, as we discussed when I was visiting, it goes against the first commandment, having other gods before the Most High, and putting Jesus in the God seat, saying he's God. That's, you're worshiping, you're idolizing, you're worshiping other gods, to put it bluntly. And if people would step out of their comfort zone and even entertain the thought that he might not be God, because most people won't even entertain that thought because they don't want to be deceived, and they don't want to think outside the box because if I do that, then I'll be deceived. But the logic behind it, even before you look at scriptures, when it comes to this subject, it's such a big one. And I agree, it's a huge deception that needs to be looked at anyone who claims to follow their Father, anyone who claims to follow scriptures, the Most High. It needs to be looked at. And it's huge, it's massive, it's the big one before like all the others. So I just want to agree in that and emphasize the importance of it, because it's really important to me. That's how I came to the conclusion. I just started thinking about it, and I'm like, wow, if he's not God, then I am indeed worshiping another God. And that was humbling and really got me to look at the subject.
Skip Moen has been writing on this quite a bit lately in the last few posts, and he was talking about celebrity worship, like by everyone following Jesus now, and he's like the hero. He's basically they're raising this man up as a celebrity, and everything is about Jesus, and Jesus paid it all, and Jesus did everything, and Hercules. And instead of focusing on what his message was, it's all about Jesus. I just, a church that my husband grew up in just is changing their doctrinal statement, and they're changing their name. They're taking the they haven't not announced the name yet, but I'm pretty sure they'll be taking Baptist out of the name because it's has come to have an entirely different meaning than what it was at the time when they named the church 100 years ago or whatever. And um, anyway, that's one change, but they're also making a change in their doctrinal statement, because they never say in their doctrinal statement that Jesus is God. They say Jesus is the Son of God. And, or they don't say that he's deity. And they want to really emphasize that they are a New Testament church that follows Jesus as God, which is taking it to a new level. And anyway, this idea that you don't have to do anything. I mean, this is said all many times in our churches, that Jesus, like, well, I this one guy was talking to me about this boy who was really struggling with pornography, and the boy, said, I just wish that when I did that, God would punish me in some horrible way so bad that I would never want to do that again. And the answer is, well, Jesus paid it all. He paid for all of that. And so where does it leave the boy? What does he have? What does he have to hold on to? What does he have to help him change? If the answer is just Jesus paid it all, he already took the punishment for that. You don't have to take the punishment. There's no, like you said, no emphasis on holy living and the message that he had about the kingdom. We want to look at, and he's talking about going back, to the Torah and obeying God's commandments. And holy living is working out your salvation. It's a lot of work, and you can't just say, well, Jesus paid it all, and that's all I have to do, So the idea of celebrity worship, I thought was interesting, as opposed to what was his message and how can we follow it.
Well, when they, if anybody dares in the Christian community, at least from my experience, if anybody dares to point out that Jesus was indeed pointing to Torah and following in obedience, that grace, you're taking away the message of grace, and that, again, Jesus did it all and he paid the ultimate price, and you don't want to go that way, because then there's obligation, there's works involved, and you dare not bring up the subject of works, because that means we have to do something. We're obligated to do something. Ooh, that's the big bad one right there. It's all being missed. It's all being missed, and so they're preaching against it like it's a burden, like it's legalistic. And but the thing is, these people that are preaching against it, they don't even know what it is. That's the sad part. They don't even know what it is. And if they did, they'd be looking at it differently.
They don't know what is.
Torah.
Oh.
What like our father's instructions to his children. Every father has instructions that they expect their children to live by. It's instructions for living, that's all it is. And if you dare that, you bring that up, it's
well, they've got, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus simplified it all down to that. So they don't look any deeper.
Like, what is love? What is love? Can a man beat his wife and go, baby, I love you? He doesn't love her. That's not love. Oh, but then if he stops, that's works. Showing somebody you love him, it's an action, it's a verb. It's something we do. We don't just have this great little feeling in the pit of our stomach. Oh, I love you. Like, it's silliness. That's not real. That's, I show my husband I love him. I show my children I love them every day. It's actions.
Yeah, that's funny. When talking about love, I remember, who defines love? When you use that thought came to my mind early on when I started this part of my walk. How do you define it? And when I used to say that I love God, I love him with my whole heart, it was really, I look back on myself and I was just consider myself a fan. I was part of the God fan club. I just loved him, and I just loved him until I couldn't love him anymore. I mean, how do you express loving him, except just raise your hands higher when you worship, or clap louder and cheer, and
Yes.
sing louder, and that's how you love him more, but that's not, boy, my mind has changed on that. Not that you don't, express him in that way, but it's more than just this feeling that you have, and this get all excited at his name. It's deeper, and there's action involved, and I won't do things that I know he hates, and and if I do those things, I want to be convicted of it so that I don't do them, because I don't want to do those things. And that is how I love, so I think that's funny. Because that is how I used to describe it in my mind. Is I was part of his fan club, and then this celebrity worship, bringing that up, Kelly, that made me think of people live vicariously through Yeshua. In other words, they don't have to go through all the stuff Yeshua did. They just cling to him, and he did all that stuff. So we just, live vicariously through him. We don't want to come under any kind of persecution in the way he did. So we're not going to now I'm going to step on some toes, because Yeshua, and this goes not just for Christians, but this is Hebrew roots, this is everybody. People are afraid to speak the words of Yah because of the price, or because of the cost of speaking it. Now, obviously, everybody's in different situations, and if the Father is telling you, I don't want you to say that right now, then don't say that right now. But there are people who may be afraid, holding back, because of persecution. They don't want to say, and I don't want to tell my family that. And I'm not talking about immediate family, I'm not talking about your husband, I'm just talking, generally speaking, and I'm not talking to any specific person here, but I'm thinking about this idea of living vicariously through Yeshua. And I'm so grateful that he bore the stripes, and he went through the suffering and all that he went through for my behalf. And yet we get off scot-free. I mean, we're able to function in this world and not be persecuted that way. How is that possible? We obviously are not doing something right if we're not being persecuted by anybody. Because if the world loves us, then there's something wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're catching my drift, but we all do it. I mean, at various levels, and I mean, I don't want to admit that I do it. I have to really stop and think about, oh my goodness, how am I doing that? But we do need to be careful for ourselves, that we don't do that, because it is easy to point fingers and say, oh, those Christians, or oh, those Hebrew roots people, but we have to continue to stay humble and stay soft, and like, okay, am I living vicariously through him, and am I being called to do something or live a certain way or say a certain thing, and I'm not following through with that, playing it safe or whatnot? But those are just some ideas that just kind of like popped in my head in the last 10 minutes. I wasn't planning on saying any of that. That just kind of came out in that, because I do think that we're approaching, if not already in it, in an age where you got to put up or shut up. I mean, if you think that you're a follower of Yeshua, and the more your understanding becomes refined, there is going to come a point where he's going to say, okay, now go and speak. And you're going to have to go and speak. And that means putting a lot of things on the line. But there's great reward in that. There's a profit. There's great reward in following in his footsteps. This may not apply to everybody that's listening to this call or listening in here, but That's all I'm gonna say on that.
Are you saying, Carrie, that you believe that we're coming to a time where believers will be persecuted?
Yeah. Yes, I do. I already think that, we've all suffered
Have you
some level of,
been on Facebook lately, Kelly?
We already are.
yeah, we're already suffering persecution on some level, but I think it's going to be on a,
Look,
George has something to say, I think.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, we everybody is. So just think about it in the different ways that we stand up for what we believe in the ideas that Jesus and God and other things. Most people believe the opposite. And if you verbalize it.
I was just going to say about love. That's what I love about this whole group. You're not going off on tangents. You're kind of following the spirit to me. You know what I'm saying? And man, just let it go. I really do love this group just for that. I'm just been listening and thinking, wow, this is way over my pay grade, but I'm digging it. I'm learning. So, but good questions, Kelly, on the boldness. That's always struck a fear in me. Approach the throne of grace boldly. Not me, because I know the prophets in the Old Testament, when God appeared to them, they were brought to the throne, they trembled and fell as if dead. I ain't in no way, shape, form, or fashion bolder than them. You know what I'm saying? So I think it does mean approach it with confidence that our Father will do. And he does, and he has done, and he proved that through Messiah, But anyway, there's a lot of tricks to this Christianity. Oh, you can go to the throne and you don't have to do nothing. Or, you don't have to work. Like Emily's saying, that's a bad word. That you're not trusting Jesus. And if Jesus ain't God, then you're turned away from Jesus. And if you turn away from Jesus and don't believe in him, you're really in jeopardy. And it's not about not believing in Jesus. It's about not believing Jesus was God. And I don't believe he was. But anyway, I'm still studying, That's what, sum it up, that's really what I love about this whole Zoom room group. It's just, I love the humility, and I love the whole aspect of it. And I trust my Father is in this with his spirit. You're talking about spirit of wisdom. I trust that. And, I don't know. Love is not beating your wife. But what about your wife beating you? No, never mind. I'm not going to get into that. I deserved it. Okay. No. Anyway, I love you guys. That's it.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the persecution. We've all suffered a certain level of persecution coming out of whatever mainstream, anything mainstream, you suffer some kind of persecution. But I think that the kind of persecution we might get excommunicated from our church or from our friends, the sphere of influence that we operate in a particular point in our life. But that's not real persecution, in my opinion. Persecution is when they go after you. If you look up the word persecution, it means that they're coming after you, pursuing you. And I think that once the ideas that we're espousing and living out, walking, when that starts taking hold, then there's going to come a more severe persecution on a physical level, in my opinion. That's when I think people will start seeking to not just shun you or say all manner of evil against you, but they'll come after you. And I think that's the kind of stuff that the disciples in Yeshua's day and thereafter dealt with when they would come after them. And that's going to be a matter of, are we going to be able to withstand that? And hopefully, I believe we can. Yeshua is our example. I believe that even just with the subject of the flat earth as an example, so a few years ago, that was unheard of. I didn't know anybody who thought the earth was flat or even questioned it. And in just a matter of probably 2 years, Now it's in mainstream. They're talking about it on, what was it, ABC Nightline or something they had. It's out there now, and you've got people in the science world trying to give an explanation for why things are the way they are on this globe, and to combat the flat earth argument, as if that argument even needs to be addressed. Well, nowadays it does, because it's taking hold across the nations. And I think it's going to be the same way with these other ideas that are coming up regarding, for example, Yeshua. Is he a man, or was he God that came to earth as a man? A line is going to be drawn, and we're going to have to decide. And so people are going to have to do their homework on it, or just hold blindly to whatever they believe. But if you do your homework, you'll feel better, I think, more convicted in your belief. I highly recommend the homework. But you're going to have to make a decision, because I think there's going to be a point where you're going to have to decide. You're going to have to choose which side you're on.
That's why you need to write your book, Carrie, because of the internet, what is happening is that everybody's becoming their own doctor, and everybody's becoming their own theologian, and everybody Googles everything now. If there's anything that you want to know, you look it up on the internet. And if there is if that becomes an issue, like this, like you said, comes out in the mainstream, they're gonna say, what would people even say that Jesus is not God? Why would any of that even become an issue? And if they find very solid work that's really where you've really done your homework, people can see it now and maybe get it, that we have been deceived, and that there has been a, it used to be you just had what the preacher said, everybody believed it, he went to seminary, he knows. We had no way of knowing. Nobody of us had a whole library of books like he had to study. But now people are looking up things on their own, and there's a lot of good stuff out on the flat earth now. Of course, there's also those people out there putting out bogus stuff that makes it look ridiculous, but people are becoming more adept, I'd say, at ciphering through all the information, because we have an overload of information today. And so you have to be more adept at spotting fake news. That's become like the biggest thing now. Nobody trusts anyone anymore to tell them the truth. And so we were just talking about how that's being carried over. Politics is being carried over into the church, and how now people aren't so trusting of the pastor anymore. They're not certain, because, well, there's been embezzlement, and there's been affairs, and all these things that pastors have been involved in, and in the Catholic Church as well. It's everyone has to become their own expert in it nowadays, where before people trusted the government, people trusted the pastor, they trusted their teachers at school. And now maybe God is doing all this on purpose, breaking this whole system down so that we don't follow blindly like we have done for so many years.
Yeah, the sower of tares is still very active. The internet can be a great learning tool, but it's also a great field for, the old sower of tares. He knows it. He's got his angle down pretty good, But then that comes to my Father. I have to trust above all my Father in heaven, that he will speak to me and let me know, because I'm stupid. I can get on that rabbit hole, so to speak, real quick. And, it's so interesting. Hell, that's when my ears are itching. You know what I'm saying? So I have to be careful of itching ears and listen to my Father. But anyway.
I agree. It's really easy to go down those rabbit holes, and it sucks us all in. I know it does at one point or another. It's just using discernment and asking the Father for wisdom in every situation. I research health a lot. I've become my family's doctor. because I don't trust doctors, and doctors can't handle large, they're not involved in your family life. They don't see symptoms. They don't see what's going on. So there's so much information out there. It's so easy to just fall into one or another, or just be sucked into everything, or not even knowing what to believe because there's so much information out there. So he's given me wisdom as I study about certain things. He's given me wisdom. I've asked for it, and he's given me wisdom. And I've been able to weed through all the junk and find what works for my family. And, so it's really great.
Yeah, let's go ahead and thank you guys for sharing.
Let's
I
see. Is there anybody who wants to make a comment before we wrap up and end the recording? Any comments or questions that you want on there?
No, I think we're good. You can go ahead and